Bobby's acting career is the 4th episode of the 1st season of Taxi. This is, of course, directed by the wonderful James Burrows, and there will be spoilers from now as I talk about the episode. And in general, it's a really good episode. There are some really great moments. There are a couple of awkward bits of editing, and I will mention those when we get there. I will perhaps give the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's just the way it's carried across onto the DVD version, but they weren't great. But in general, it's a good episode. It starts off with Alex driving the taxi, and a man with a dog gets in the car. The dog is called Hamlet. It's absolutely beautiful. And Alex ends up driving off with the dog. And we come back to that in a little bit. The main narrative focuses on Bobby and the fact that 3 years ago he told himself that if he didn't get a paid acting job within 3 years, he would quit acting. And those 3 years are almost up. At this point, the owner of Hamlet comes down to the garage to get his dog back, but they don't want to give him the dog because of how he treats the dog. And he quite rightly tells them that if you don't give me my dog back, I'm going to go to the police, which is fair enough. And he says, does anybody want to talk to me about that or not? And I don't like Latka as a character. I don't think he's very funny. But I did in that moment like the fact that it was very clear he was the one who was going to talk to this person because he wasn't going to get any sense out of him. So I don't like the character as such, but in that moment I did find that quite funny. And Bobby then finds out that he didn't get the job for which he had auditioned, and we have this sweet moment where Hamlet actually comforts him, which is rather sweet. But then Alex tells him, if you want this job, you need to go and do something about it and get in line and audition for everything you can. And this is exactly what Bobby does. We have our first bit of 2 awkward bits of editing. This is not as bad as the one later on, but Bobby replies to Alex that yes, he's going to go and do that. But as he's replying to Alex, we are looking at his silhouette driving in the taxi, and it's just a really odd choice. The transition there is really clunky, and I really didn't like it. We are then, immediately after that, we see him talking to some people, and then immediately after, everybody's gathered to celebrate the job he's got, but actually that's not why they're there. They're celebrating the job he is determined to get. He is so confident that because he auditioned for quite a few things, by midnight that night he will get a phone call offering him the part. And Alex thinks that he's setting himself up for a big fall, which I think is fair, because it does seem like Bobby's not really thinking logically about the situation. You don't just go to a bunch of auditions and then that day get a call saying you're going to get one of the roles. It might happen, but it's not exactly a reasonable way to approach things. Although Alex was right in that, I don't think it was really fair of him to tell Bobby that maybe he's not a good actor yet. And I didn't see what Bobby was doing. Bobby obviously has this outburst. He tells him to get out. He's really hurt by what Alex says. He obviously really cares about Alex's opinion. And I thought his response was believable and genuine. And then it turns out he was just acting. And he says to Alex, he's still saying, I'm not such a good actor. I loved that. I thought that was a really great way to show Alex that he didn't know what he was talking about and he shouldn't have said those things. And I thought that was brilliant, and I didn't see it coming. And I rather found that quite amusing. I was very, very curious as well to find out if he would get this phone call. I didn't think he would, because I think that was unreasonable. But it was quite intense. When they were counting down the seconds to midnight, it was definitely quite intense. And I really wanted the phone to ring, but I also didn't expect it to. But also, what casting director is phoning somebody at midnight? I don't know. I've never been phoned by a casting director, so maybe it does happen. But to me, that seems a little bit unreasonable and a bit of an unfair expectation. And the phone call doesn't arrive. And I wasn't really sure how Bobby would react to this. And he just kind of shrugs it off and says, I'll give myself another 3 years. And I love that attitude. You set yourself a goal. You didn't achieve that goal. So set a new goal. I love that outlook. I think that's absolutely fantastic. It's only failure if you don't try. And instead of thinking, well, I failed, I'll give up, he just kind of reset the clock and started again and didn't give up. And I just think that was kind of the most believable, realistic outcome, with a really great message about having this positive attitude, about not giving up and not letting it get to him too much. And I think it was the best way to take that part of the narrative. Sure, I would have loved it if he got a phone call and got an acting gig, but at midnight, maybe not that realistic, so I rather liked the way it went. And then we have the final scene where the police have arrived with Hamlet's owner to get back Hamlet, and they decide that whoever Hamlet comes to when they call him is Hamlet's owner. And they call Hamlet, and Hamlet ends up going to his owner. And this is the other bit of editing that's really poor, very badly done. But again, maybe it's something wrong with the audio on the DVD version. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. But once they realise the dog is actually sinking its teeth into its owner, at least that's what I assumed is happening. Obviously on screen, that's not what we're looking at. But I think that's what's going on there. Somebody says, it's his dog, multiple times. But it's not coming from anybody's mouth. And it's kind of like the audio has been added on top after the fact, which it may well have done. Doing line pickups is not that unusual. But the editing of that is very poor. And it just didn't work very well at all. So that was a little bit clunky and not the best way to end things. I also just didn't love that ending with the dog. I just don't think that was the right way to take it, because they're basically saying, if I'm reading it correctly, they're basically saying, sure, the dog can go off with the owner who hits him and mistreats him because the dog's a biter, so he deserves it. Like, that's awful. No, that dog should be rescued and given a loving home so it won't be sinking its teeth into people. Maybe I'm misreading it, but that's certainly what I got from that, and I don't love it. I don't love that ending. But the rest of the episode, absolutely fine. In fact, I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I thought Bobby was brilliant with some really great messages. Bobby's acting career is definitely an enjoyable episode of Taxi.